Okay, good evening, everyone. Some of you are still signing in. It's nice to see you again. Welcome to another episode of Mondays with Moshe. I'm Moshe Norman, and out of Lakewood, New Jersey. Remember, the purpose of this discussion, weekly discussion, is to bring more attention and focus to the process of therapy that goes on. And I don't know who could be a more appropriate guest to discuss the process of therapy than Dr. Daniel Hughes. Dan, I really appreciate that you took the time to come on and join us tonight for a clinical discussion. I actually invited some parents to join as well, because I think that attachment is really at the root of everything, and hopefully we'll hear more about that. But thank you for joining and taking of your time to grace us with your presence. Can you tell us just a little bit about your background, who you are, how you came to attachment, this fixation on attachment, and really sort of capitalizing on the idea of attachment?
Certainly, Moshe, happy to do that. I'll just start anywhere. And then if I'm missing a bit or you want me to fill in a blank, I'm happy to do that. If I go on too long, I'm happy to cut it short. When I became a clinical psychologist, I wanted to, I was a young person, which meant I was fairly idealistic. So I wanted to work at the time, the community mental health centers were still they're getting federal funding to have mental health centers in the community. So I wanted to work at a community mental health center. So I did, and they asked me to become the director of children's services, which was a surprise because I wasn't too interested in children, but it was needed. And they said, you need to develop a child abuse program. And I said, why? And they said, because children who've been abused have more mental health problems. And I said, they do? That's interesting. I wonder why. Because in my graduate training, there was nothing about trauma back then. It was debated whether or not it existed. We're talking a long time ago, Moshe.
Sounds like it.
But it was debated.
But that probably was in the days before trauma. People actually had trauma. Everything was good back then.
Right, there's no trauma. Correct. And so people were saying that it's your mental representation. You imagined you were traumatized. It never really happened. So things like that were occurring. So anyway, I was happy to develop a program for traumatized children. I thought, boy, this is good. This is just what I wanted to do. And then I realized I wasn't able to help them. I was using what was called evidence-based at the time, but it was very ineffectual in terms of analytic approaches and cognitive behavioral approaches, family systems approaches. They weren't doing anything that I could make sense of. And then I was sort of puzzled, didn't know what to do with it. I'm a young person, I'm idealistic, and I didn't want to work with just middle-class families who are reasonably okay. I thought these kids are, at worst, are going to be neurotic as adults, but they'll still do okay. I mean, what the heck? They could get by. But the traumatized kids, these are the kids who aren't going to make it. They'll be in prisons or drugs or abusive situations. So, but I didn't know what to do with it. And then my brain really turned around when a 10-year-old girl who was in foster care, because she'd been traumatized, of course, I was talking to her and I said, this is your fourth home. And things usually go well for about 3 months, then they start going poorly. And would you like some help with that? And she says, yes, would you help me, please? Which surprised me. She wanted help. And I said, yes, how may I be of help to you? And she said, would you help me to move every 3 months? And I thought, my goodness, what she wants is going to destroy her psychologically. She can't want that, but she was very clear she wanted that. And I thought, no wonder I can't help these kids. They don't want what I want for them. And I don't want what they want for themselves. So we got to figure out what that's about. And then I thought, how does this make sense? What made sense to me is she doesn't have a clue what attachment's about. And so I went back to my books that I had read in grad school about attachment, which was considered the fad at the time. It would be a short-lived concept, never dreaming that there are now 30,000 research studies on attachment from birth to death. But at the time, it was still, questionable. But even if the theory and the research was starting to get solid, there was no application of it. So I thought, I want to figure out how to apply this in therapy. That's what this girl needs. She needs to figure out how to have parents that she could rely on. She doesn't know what to do with parents. She mistreated her foster parents all the time. So I started reading people that might help me. Dan Stern had some lovely views on infant development from a very affectively rich, person-centered perspective that I like, analytic as well. But then I started reading other researchers, and I went back to John Bowlby, of course, and read what he had to say. Then I fell in love with Colwyn Trevarthen, a psychologist in Scotland who's still alive, Professor Emeritus, University of Edinburgh, in his research on how babies formed relationships. And then I thought, okay, now I got to apply this. And what am I going to do? Well, I'll rely on my kids. I had 3 little kids at the time. Now, isn't that what a wonderful opportunity? I could practice on my own kids.
We call them guinea kids.
There you go. I had 3 guinea kids.
Guinea kids. I just made that up.
And I thought, hey, heck, these kids can form attachments to me. They like me. They rely on me. They seek comfort from me. They accept my guidance and my support and my limits, my directives. They are fine in all sorts of ways. And those are aspects of attachment. So then I said, I got to start utilizing what human beings do with their own children in therapy. They never had a parent do that with them, and they need to learn how to do that. And then I need to help them to learn how to do that, and then help their foster parents or their adoptive parents to learn how to modify sort of their natural intuitive way of parenting with a child who doesn't trust it, who doesn't want it, who's afraid of it, who's either very avoidant, very disorganized in their approach to it, very oppositional, et cetera. So that was it. And then since then, I've been writing and studying and practicing more and learning more and changing ideas and throwing out some ideas. And the best example of that is my book, Building the Bonds of Attachment, which is a story. I just finished, I did the 3rd edition in 2017. So, 2017. Anyway, because it's a story, so I just changed the story as the theory developed, as my experience deepened. I went back and changed the story, which was very handy.
Yeah.
The kids said different things, the parents said different things. The parent did not do certain things that I realized weren't that helpful, so I threw those out and added new things. Okay, and also it more books because the 3rd edition
easy to modify. Easy to modify a story that never happened, right?
Yes, yeah, because they were composite. It was a composite story.
Yeah. Okay. So I really want to start, to some degree from the basics. Can you first tell us, because I know there are people on who probably haven't, either have the majority of people on here I see are clinicians and are familiar with the concept of attachment or the term attachment. Can you just give us a little background of what it means to have an attachment with a child, a parent-child or caregiver-child attachment? What are the different types of attachment, the ranges of different types of attachment, and then, before secure attachment, and then we'll talk about the secure attachment, and we'll move that into therapy.
Well, a parent does not have an attachment to their child. They have an emotional bond with their child. They have a commitment to their child. They love their child, but they don't have an attachment to the child because the attachment, by definition, according to the researchers, means you turn to that person for safety. And you don't want a parent to turn to their child for safety. You want it to be the other way around. So the child needs to attach to the parent. The parent needs to have a strong bond with their child. And so basically attachment is about babies can't take care of themselves. So they need to have an innate intuitive desire to be near, to approach as soon as they could crawl, to get the attention of as soon as they can cry, to do something so the parents will meet their needs when they're scared, they're hungry, they're cold, they're wet, whatever their basic physiological need is, the parent will there and meet it. Well, fairly quickly they realize sometimes kids will cry simply because they're alone and they want some company. They want some interaction with their parent. So the psychological aspect, psychological needs became important too. In the sense of the baby, if safety, the parent was seen as a source of safety for the baby, and the baby would feel safe when near the parent. So they go to develop those care for their basic needs. Then over time, they just felt comfortable hanging out with their parents when they're babies and toddlers, and they want to then learn from the parents. So it goes from safety to the source of learning. My parents will guide me and teach me how to talk and how to notice things, and what's interesting, what's frightening, what to be scared of, what to enjoy doing, and all sorts of things. So
Now, a number of years ago, I read your book, this book, The 8 Keys to Building Your Best Relationships, which I found immensely insightful and helpful in my own parenting skills and strategies. And in it, you discussed the various attachment types, attachment styles, and how they're formed and what they look like later in life. So when you have somebody with a disorganized or an anxious ambivalent attachment, what that looks like later in life. And what's so important for us, both as parents and as clinicians, to recognize is the trajectory of how treating the child actually helps to develop the personality and the attachment type. Can you get into that a little bit? Tell us what kind of parents are sort of molding which kinds of children and then adults.
Well, okay, an attachment is a pattern of behavior that you direct toward your parent. And so if you have a parent who doesn't respond well, you tend to minimize the importance of it, which is called avoidance. If a parent is very ambivalent and they come and they go and they're there sometimes and not other times, then you start to cling a bit. You get them, you want them, you're never happy because it's not very permanent, it's not very consistent and predictable. And then you have the disorganized kid who doesn't have a pattern. He doesn't have a pattern. The avoidant has a pattern of minimizing. The ambivalent has a pattern of overstating the importance of an attachment. And the disorganized kid doesn't have a pattern. So under stress, he falls apart. That kid is at risk for externalization problems and internalization problems across the board. That's the pattern that's closest tied to pathology. That's the pattern that when we wonder about why an abused child becomes an abusive parent, it's because of attachment disorganization. Almost
So
all of them have attachment disorganization.
Can you elaborate on what that means, attachment disorganization, and how that manifests into adulthood? Like, what does that look like in an adult?
All right. Well, disorganized means it's not a pattern, so it's disorganized, and then so it's often unpredictable, but it's at the same time could be very controlling. That's the kid who wants to control everything that you do. And as an adult, it's the term for an adult because the attachment classifications, the 4 of them, go from infancy to old age. But when you're an adult, they just call it differently. They call it unresolved. So that's the adult who is unresolved with regard to attachment, which means that attachment issues, attachment themes as they come up, involving safety and intimacy, relying on somebody, turning to somebody for support and guidance and all that, it evokes in us unresolved, probably relational traumas, abandonment themes, maltreatment, things that we haven't resolved. So then as an adult, when those themes are evoked in me, it's likely I won't be able to stay regulated and be present for my kid whose attachment needs are active. So the greatest prediction of an attachment disorganization isn't abuse and neglect. It's the adult who, when the attachment needs of the child are very active, becomes very angry or very frightened by the child. Because when you're unresolved with your own pattern, you experience the intensity of your child's pattern, and you just can't stay resolved. You can stay regulated, I mean, and you become angry or enraged, or you become afraid of. And then you
And so let's imagine what message that's giving to the little child.
Basically, I can't handle this. I don't want this. Don't turn to me for comfort and support. There's something wrong. I don't even want to see it. You may become invisible. So if you go beyond a certain threshold, you become very intense, affectively, very intense emotion about you, I'm probably going to not respond in a way that you could turn to me for safety. So as a result, then that kid, when when they have intense emotions, the intense emotions never get regulated. And then the kid
So
falls apart.
in other words, the parent isn't there to soothe, to be present, to calm the child and regulate the child's emotions. Is that what you mean?
Right, and maybe not necessarily calm, it depends, they could be fairly animated, but they have to be regulated. They can't be dysregulated, or the child never learns to be regulated, never
Okay.
learns to regulate. You can't learn that on your own. You need an adult who's regulated to help you to, it has to be co-regulated before you could auto-regulate. So
Okay.
if it's never been co-regulated or rarely or inconsistently, then my ability to regulate my emotional states is going to be weak. It's going to be vulnerable.
Okay.
So then my parents, if they can't deal with intense emotions, I'm probably not going to learn how to deal with intense emotions either.
Okay. I'm going to ask you more about that. I just want to remind everybody for those who want to raise your hand and ask a question, please use the raise your hand tab on the bottom right of the screen. And you can raise your hand and Dr. Hughes will be happy to respond. I have a little visual that I kind of give when I teach about attachment, and I'm wondering if this makes sense to you. The way I teach, what's really with emotional regulation is, suppose you have a young 2-year-old child or 3-year-old child who's experiencing an intense emotion. Let's call it jealousy. So the child's, how do we get it? The child's regulated. Now something happens. Their brother got a red lollipop, and they also want to let red lollipop. It's not fair. He got the red one, and there's no more red ones in there. And so they escalate. And so now we went from being regulated, baseline, to escalation. And the child's up here now. Now, if the parent is able to validate the child, calm the child, understand the child's pain, be present for the child, then this is what starts to happen. It goes down. And then the next time it goes down. And the third time it goes down. And eventually, as the child experiences that same sense of jealousy, the child sort of like letting go of the bike, the child starts to learn that he's okay or she's okay with feeling jealous. There's nothing wrong or bad about that. And then they kind of start to regulate on their own. So they get a little pinch feeling of jealousy. By the time they're an adult, they can feel a negative emotion and then sort of regulates on its own. As opposed to when it goes up and the parent either dismisses and pushes it down, where then they'll start to suppress, or the parent, of course, pacifies and runs to the other side of town to the grocery to buy a red lollipop. Every time the child has a tantrum, the parent gets dysregulated and tries to fix it. So what the message that the child is getting is that your emotions are not okay to be experienced. We can't hold them for you and with you and co-regulate with you. And so now they will learn, I can't have this emotion. This is bad. I need to suppress. And those are the adults who start to deny many of their feelings. They say, oh, I'm not jealous. I don't need it anyway. What's the point of it? And they'll start to dismiss their own feelings because they don't trust that they don't trust that it's okay to have these negative emotions. Does that resonate with you?
For the most part, for the most part, it really does. You mentioned co-regulate, and that's what has to happen. But how is it done? It's probably not done with calmness. Because if the child is dysregulated, he's very intense, having this little hissy fit, and the parent stays very calm and rational, it's likely the child won't experience the parent getting it and being fully present.
Beautiful. So this is where I want to, this is where, see, I don't know if you remember, but about 10 years ago, I was at a training that you gave in Lakewood. And I think the greatest impact that you made on me from that training was in exactly how you demonstrated, matching of the affect from parent to child. Can you do that for us here? Can you show us what it will look like when a child is in distress and the parent has to sort of match that affect and not somehow be incongruent to that?
Okay, but if somebody starts laughing and I can see that person is laughing, I may.
Yeah, turn off your screen if you're going to laugh. But this is
right.
This is my
I don't want
favorite.
you to laugh. Just do it quietly and turn off your screen. Okay, the kid is your kid is screaming, "I want the red lollipop!" Daddy, please give me the red lollipop. He has it, so I don't have it. You love him more than me. Oh, son, you really do want that, don't you? It's so important to you. You're saying, Daddy, I want it. I'm saying, son, you're not going to get it now. It's for your brother. He has one, but you're not getting it now. Oh, you're unfair. You're mean. Oh, you don't like me now, do you? You're angry with me, don't you, son? Because I'm saying you can't have it now, son. We'll be doing other things. How can I help you with this? Because you're not going to get it now, son. What can I do to help you? What can I do to help you? Oh, would you like a little cuddle, son? Would that help? And then maybe we could do something else. Would that help? Oh, okay, sure. Here you go. And the kid is fine.
Exactly. Like when they scrape their knee. So this
Yeah,
is
because
so
you're regulated, but you're not
this-
angry. You're not
now,
angry with a kid. So Dan Stern talks about matching the affect, which is the body's expression of the emotion, but you don't have the anger that the kid has. The kid has the emotion of anger. You don't have the emotion of anger. But when you match it, the kid tends to join you and then they regulate because you're
now
regulated.
was that deliberate towards the end as you started to regulate? Were you mirroring the child's regulation, or were you deliberately calming it down, or was that just a demonstration of
It's
what would
not,
normally?
it's just a natural thing that happens.
That's what would
The more
normally
you
happen.
get consciously trying to control it, the more you mess it up. Yeah, really the best thing is just allow yourself intuitively to join the kid in it. And then once you're in it and you're synchronized, is it 1/10 of a second I lead him or he leads me 1/10 of a second? I don't know. Sometimes it's probably one and sometimes it's probably the other.
So, but the key is matching the affect and allowing the child to experience that feeling, showing him that his feelings are valid and understandable to you.
Understandable, you experience understanding, you experience empathy for them, you accept them, you're not judging them. They are what they are.
You understand their position and their predicament.
Right, it's not behavior. He didn't punch his brother. He just said, I really want that red lollipop. I'm angry I don't have one. That's fine.
Right. When I read your book years back, there was one word that really, again, left an impact on me. And this was the description of strengthening attachment. You talked about showing interest in the child's stuff, showing curiosity, and then you used the word, if I remember correctly, you used the word delightful. Okay, showing that the child is delightful to you. What we want to do is we want our children to get a sense that they are interesting, that the things that they worry about, think about, talk about matter, and that they are delightful to us.
Yes,
Did you use that word? Am I right?
you certainly are right.
Oh,
Yes.
yes. Okay.
I think many thousands of other people have used that word too
Okay.
with babies.
So maybe I was just testing you to see if you remember.
Yeah, right. I didn't
Okay.
forget it. I'm
So-
still on that motion.
Okay, you're still on the delightful. So we're still looking to make our children feel like they are delightful to us.
Correct.
I
Yeah.
think one of the
We're
things that I
moving out
think,
of attachment now, though. Hope you don't mind.
how's that?
Attachment is one directional.
Okay, but
The kid comes to me for safety. I don't go to him for safety.
right, but
Delightful.
is the child
If I'm
feeling?
experiencing delight, he's experiencing light. We're both experiencing delight. So now we're moving into the theory and the research of intersubjectivity,
I see.
which is to me it's a double helix. They really are interwoven, but they're different innate motivating factors in human development. That reciprocal thing that would be mutual delight, mutual joy, mutual interest. We're experiencing it together. That is called intersubjectivity, where my experience of the baby, I experience delight and communicate it. So what's that baby think? I'm a delightful kid.
Yes.
And they also are empowered. They have the capacity to evoke delight in their parents. That is a very powerful ability to have. So if I sit there and I'm bored with my baby, the kid does not experience him or herself as having the power to evoke delight in me. I'm really limiting my kid's sense of self. So he gets a lot out of it, but guess who also gets a lot out of it? I do, by experiencing delight.
What happens? I mean, classic example. What happens when a parent has a child who is developmentally delayed or autistic, and suddenly that reciprocity is not happening.
Correct.
So the parent
now we
starts.
got a challenge.
Parents start to
The
burn out.
parents at risk for just starting to feel like a failure as a parent, it's their fault, not experiencing delight, and not experiencing an ability to accept the being of their child who doesn't have certain abilities that we take for granted that babies will have. They don't have them. And
Now,
that's hard.
what would happen? And again, I don't know if this is studied, but I'm wondering what would happen if a parent, let's take a mother, who has a autistic baby, who's nursing the baby, and for whatever reason does not give up. This mother is
What? I'm sorry.
she does not give up. This mother is determined. No matter what reciprocity is coming back from the baby, this mother knows about intersubjectivity, about attachment, about good parenting. It's the only child she'll ever have, and she's going to give it her all. And she does not give up on providing that sense of delight, that sense of happiness, that sense of joy to the child. In other words, deliberately, even though she's not getting it back. Do you know if there's any research on whether a child, I mean, I don't know how there could be research because I don't know that they would know that the baby is autistic at such a young age, but does the child stand a better chance of developing some level of, interpersonal social personality?
I would actually worry more if the parent, say, feels I have to experience delight and joy and enthusiasm and excitement being with my baby. Well, an autistic child, almost by definition, doesn't particularly like excitement and energy and eye contact and touch and getting in sync with the parent. And if the parent is pushing that and pushing that and pushing that, I could see the autistic child running further and further away because it's not attuned. It's not matching the child's ability. So I'm in her mind, if she's saying to herself, my child isn't responding very well. I have to discover something in my child that he or she will respond to. Now, it might be I don't have to do that with my other kids. They just respond naturally, but I have to search for something that can touch my autistic child and they're with me in that. Now, it might be the tiniest little thing that the parent sees the child is responding to, so it's becoming reciprocal. But then they have to accept the fact that they may not find it today, or that was there yesterday, but not today. They have to be able to accept. The researchers talk about the zone of proximal development, where you see where the kid is, you accept it totally, and you expect one inch more, and if you don't get it, you accept that. And the next day, you expect 1 inch more, and if you don't get it, you accept that. You just are tiny baby steps toward the child starting to learn how to do reciprocity. And he or she may get to their fullest potential that way, but they're probably, if they had this, as a sort of whatever we call it, constitutional movement toward autism, we may reduce the intensity of it, and it may be a milder version of it. So I think most researchers would now say the blend between the environment can influence that constitutional tendency toward autism. It'll still be there, though, very likely.
So what I think what I'm hearing you say is that the parent will be better off with using attunement than trying to push her own agenda of attachment or connection where the child does not have the capacity to receive it.
Correct. So the parent has to really study their baby and accept what they discover.
And in truth, that's really with all children.
With all children, right.
Yeah.
And the danger is the parent won't be able to do that because they're so disappointed that this child with autism just isn't doing it.
Right.
They're
not responding. There's only so much that a parent can try and not be successful and continue to try.
Right. So an intervention with a parent of an autistic child has to be able to help them to not blame themselves for it, their kid isn't responding, it's not them. So if they do more and more and more of it, it'll just get worse and worse and worse. So they have to sort of slow down. This child temperamentally, constitutionally, whatever the reasons are, is not responding. So I have to find a way to connect. And it's going to be a very delicate way. When I get kids in my office, severely neglected kids often have very strong autistic features, and you don't know what came first, the chicken or the egg, but now they have a lot of autistic features. And then with those kids, eye contact, which I love, being close to kids, which I love, is not happening. I look at them with peripheral vision. Then I do parallel play. I talk to myself. I get into quiet rhythms that are more within me rather than interpersonal, and invite the child to be there. And I watch them out of the corner of my eye, and I might match something they're doing, but I'll make it somewhat sneaky, somewhat subtle. I'm not going to overwhelm the kid with it or expect him to respond. I have to be very patient.
Okay, so that's fascinating, and that's really getting into some of my next question, which is, taking it to the therapy room. How would you address an unresponsive child, a child who kind of doesn't talk or avoids? And I'm not yet talking about a resistant child. That's going to be the follow-up. But just with a child who's very unresponsive, doesn't bring any energy, doesn't seem to trust, but is not outwardly oppositional. So they're not bringing any good energy to the room, any energy to the room either.
Well, I'm going to develop a sort of a fluid theory about what this means. I will get information from the parents, certainly historical information, evaluations and things like that. To have some, I want to guess why is a kid that way with me? And then from the guess and knowing the history, I will try to find a way to sort of connect, and it'll probably be very gentle, and it'll probably be similar to what I just described, indirect. My eyes won't be that direct. I'll be looking out the window sometimes and talking to myself. I'll be offering
What do you
ideas.
talk about to yourself?
What do I talk about this myself? I might say, well, I'm really glad Johnny came in and visited today. I hope Johnny is as well. It's hard to know because Johnny generally doesn't talk with me, and I don't read Johnny well sometimes. I'm not sure when he looks over if he's looking over because he's interested, or I'm not sure he might be looking over because he's a little worried about me or doesn't want me to get too close. I'm not sure, but I do hope Johnny is okay about being here because I'm okay with him being here. Sort of him sitting here in my office, and he might not know what I'm about, what I do, and why he's here, actually. I wonder if he's not sure or not. If he's not sure, I wonder, I think Dan, do you think you ought to tell him why he's here? Should I tell Johnny? Yeah, I think I'll tell him why he's here. He might not listen. He might not be interested because I'm not sure, but I'm just guessing he could be. So, okay, if I were to tell Johnny, what would I say to him? Notice I'm talking in the third person. I'm not talking to him.
Yes.
It's safer if I talk in the third person for him than talk to him because there's no expectation of a response. None at all. I'm talking, and he could just talk, he could fantasize another Johnny if he wants. He doesn't have to listen. I'm not asking him to respond at all. And then I'm talking about, yeah, his parents were sometimes wondering about, they wish they understood Johnny better because sometimes Johnny, well, actually not often does he talk with them. And they said, maybe he doesn't know how, but they do. He knows how to talk. He uses words sometimes and other times he doesn't. He uses certain things, they said, but other things he doesn't. So they said, Dan, would you try to get to know Johnny, and maybe you could help us to get to know him because we want a sort of a relationship with Johnny that he feels really good about and really good about us being his parents. And, and when we're together, we could just, all of us can relax and just sort of be comfortable with each other. And sometimes we're not sure if Johnny is. That's why, in case Johnny's interested, that's what I would tell him if we were to ask why he's here. Because I'm pretty good at that stuff. I know about kids. I know about parents, and I sort of know ways, because, sometimes parents sort of, well, actually parents can mess up, parents can be clueless. Sometimes parents just don't understand what kids are thinking and feeling and stuff like that. And I'm pretty good at it because I've been doing, actually, I don't know if Johnny's noticed how old I am. He may have, I don't know, he probably doesn't look at me very closely, but if he did, he'd probably see I have 87 wrinkles. He would probably, and if he counted them, he could say, I wonder if he has one wrinkle for every year of his life. I could prattle like that forever.
You're not 87.
No, I'm not, Moshe. No, you were thinking I was. No, I'm not.
I have to take a, I
It's
think I
none
have
of
to
your
take,
business how old
I
I
have to
am.
take a 5-minute break. Okay. What if you find that that's a little too overstimulating for the child?
Then I'll talk, then there would be less intensity in my voice. The rhythm will be much slower. It'll be lighter, be more gentle. I'll allow some silence, but I have to be very careful. Silence by kids, many kids has experienced as they're not good enough. Adults know silence. Kids often are confused about silence, like they're supposed to be talking. And I'm disappointed, or I've given up, or I don't want them there, or something. So talking to myself is, I'm thinking out loud. So they know what I'm thinking. They don't have to worry what I'm thinking or project all sorts of horrible things into my brain.
Right,
I'm
right.
thinking out loud. So, but if I think the kid is a bit overstimulated, I just slow it down and add some more silence, talk to myself a bit. I might say something about, I wonder if Johnny, oh, I don't know, if he likes if he likes me books or music, because I have a lot of books and music here. I wonder if he'd want me to put on some music. So I might find something that's sort of my, that I'm comfortable with, and then suggest he might be a bit bored with that. And he might, next time, if he wants to come and bring some music, he might bring his own music, something that he enjoys. So he won't have to listen to my music.
And will you find the child beginning to warm up, calm down, or move in and start engaging with you?
Will I?
Does that happen?
Yes. No, well, once a year, Moshe.
Okay, so
Well, I
that's
would
enough.
say it happens more when I decided to use an intersubjective and attachment-based stance,
Mhm.
and throughout the neutral stance, it happened a heck of a lot more. Now, does it always happen? Certainly not. And then I have to accept that and wonder about it and decide at some point, is every time I see the child, does he or she experience it as failure? That they can't do it. There's something wrong with them. They're not benefiting from therapy. In which case, I have to find a way to sort of tactfully, gradually, gently stop the therapy. I will be
Okay.
open to that possibility, but I'll be looking for cues. And this is very important from my point of view. I'm looking for changes at home. Sometimes the parents will say, he's so different at home. And in my office, I see nothing different.
Right, right, right. Sure.
So I constantly, then I would continue longer because he's getting something out of it in his way, but he doesn't want the direct interaction with me.
Mhm.
He doesn't want to
Well,
give me
well,
credit.
I think that talks to, again, the idea that a lot of what happens in therapy is the child re-experiencing themselves as different, or forget about a child, even with adults, where we can talk about certain things without actually directly addressing or attempting to fix something.
Yeah,
And because of the relational component, where the person, the client or patient, is feeling more connected, more safe, more open, less threatened, that changes their entire life experience.
oh, for sure, for sure. And the danger of therapy is we want to fix them. And did you know, Colin Trevarthen, my mentor in intersubjectivity, his research 30 years ago showed that infants around 6 months of age are pretty good at reading the intentions of adults. Well, every kid in my office knows what my intention is. And if it's to fix him, they're going to resist that. They don't want to be fixed. So what intention? This is 1/3 of intersubjectivity, complementary intentions. We have to want the same thing. Otherwise, it's not going to be intersubjective. So what do I want that he's likely to sign up for? I want to get to know him. No strings attached. And I trust the process, which I tell my students all the time. You got to trust the process. Once in a while, a smart student will say, well, tell me what the process is. You got to figure it out. No, I eventually tell them, but they have to sweat for a while.
Well, that's the
Anyway,
work. That's the process is the work.
the
That's
process
the work.
is trust the process, which is the foundation of attachment is acceptance. That's where you feel the safest. If you take a more of a fixing approach, we're talking evaluation of behavior. And
I
when a
think with
person feels their behavior is being evaluated, they tend to get defensive. We all do.
and I think even with adults who come into our office and say they want to change certain behaviors, that puts the therapist at risk. If the therapist sanctions that or agrees with that, it actually puts the therapist at risk of judgment, because there is a very obvious benefit to the maladaptive behavior that the patient is exhibiting. And when we sort of fall into the trap of agreeing that the behavior that they're doing is maladaptive and bad, we are in effect invalidating that deeper experience.
Yeah, and at the same time, if they want to be fixed and I say, no, you don't want to be fixed, you're wrong to want to be fixed, that could be a problem too.
Yeah, well, again, there's this dichotomy that has to be examined and explored.
Yeah, I will accept that they want to be fixed and let them convince me that they wanting to be fixed is they have a habit and they reflect on themselves and they say, this is not a habit that I want to identify with, that I want to be proud of. I'm not. It's not peer pressure. It's not something else. It's me. I don't like the fact that I swear, for example, or I don't like the fact that I smoke cigarettes. So I have a habit that I want to change, and I really don't have, I wanted some ideas about it. So I will explore that with the person about why they want to change that habit. But at some point, I may well totally accept that wish to change the habit. And then I'm happy to find some, look for some CBT approach that might help them to change that habit. It may simply by exploring and accepting it, it may get smaller on its own, but
Right.
not. I might look for another way to.
One of the challenges with kids is that at least most of those who come through our offices are not coming to our offices because they're requesting something to change, or they are coming to.
Sure.
So it's the people in the environment who want to change.
Correct. And they often say, well, you ought to see my parents. They're the ones who are upset about this, not me. Why don't you see them? That's a good point.
Sometimes they might be right.
Sometimes they might be. That's for sure.
Let's talk about the outwardly resistant child. So here we have a kid who comes into the therapy room. He's not just unresponsive and bringing no energy. He's bringing strong negative energy, resistance. Come and get me, come and fight me, or I'm going to come and fight you. So how does that change the manner in which you might engage them, or engage yourself for that matter?
Well, I find it to be easier to work with those kids than the kids who are sort of amorphous and they just sort of they bend with the wind and you don't know where the self is. Yep. These kids give you an avenue into the self. It's a road based on fighting. And so it's easy then. Well, it's a relative term compared to the other. I will totally accept it. And then I'll be curious. I talk about pace a lot in my books, being playful, accepting, curious, and empathic.
Right.
But why don't we just emphasize the final three and sort of go a little slower on the playfulness. But I would totally accept that this kid wants to fight with me. I will be curious about it and I have empathy about it. Because if he's fighting all the time, and he tends to do that, he's not close with people. He doesn't share with people. People don't get to know him very well. He doesn't know people very well because he's defensive. They're defensive. And there's a downside to that. However, you're doing it. So what do you get out of it? What do you want by doing that? So you want me to be good. Wait a second. Do you want to control me and have me angry with you most of the time, or be afraid of you? The four big ones that I usually am aware of, because the kids are good at evoking this, especially traumatized kids. They're good at getting the therapist to be angry with them, to be afraid of them, to give up on them, or to feel inadequate. So I'm not a robot, so I will. They're good at it. So when I get angry, anxious, give up, or feel inadequate, what do? I reflect on it. I catch it. I notice it, and then I inhibit it. And then I remain, this is described very well by the theory of Stephen Porges' theory, the polyvagal theory. But it's the same sorts of concepts what we're talking about here is if I can inhibit my tendency to get angry, anxious, give up, or feel inadequate and stay open, engaged with a kid, it's very hard for him to use this primary defense about keeping people at a distance because it's not working.
Right?
I'm
Because
totally
you're
accepting it.
forcing the attachment, you're forcing the connection, basically.
Well, again, Moshe, I don't, words are important. So forcing is something wouldn't do.
Well, again,
I will
you're
invite a connection, but if they don't connect, I would totally accept they don't connect. Then I wonder why that wasn't helpful to get them to connect. Then I'll think, what a clever kid here. I'm using my pace attitude, which gets most kids to connect, and this kid doesn't connect. So I have to use super pace. And totally accept the fact that this might be a kid who is a master at not connecting. And I'll give him credit for that. And I'll wonder, he might be getting something great from not connecting to anybody that was necessary for survival when he was living with people that connecting was a disaster. He doesn't want to go there anymore. He's really good at resisting that.
Mhm.
So I have to discover that and totally accept that.
Okay, let's take a couple of questions. Racheli, go ahead. Sternheim.
Hi. Okay, thank you so much. This is so fascinating.
Hello.
And can you hear me, by the way?
Yes, I
Yes.
can.
Okay, great. I just unmuted myself. So I actually have a case I would love to bring up. And I was thinking about this case, and I feel like what you're saying really addresses this. It's like a 13-year-old boy that I've been seeing for a while, at least a year.
Just
And
want to remind you, Racheli, just want to remind you, any private
Identifying
information,
facts.
any identifying factors.
Okay,
that.
okay, thanks for
Thanks.
reminding me. So he loves coming in for the sessions, and it's just sometimes hard to get him there, and he refuses to cancel, even like do a Zoom session. And the parents have like their own challenges. The mother's also in therapy, and the mother almost has like this depressed ego, and the father's like very controlling, and the mother in her sessions is working on setting limits. Like, it's hard for her to stand up to the father. So there's this whole like marital piece here. And the kid loves coming. And I assume, and it's interesting, he doesn't even bring things up in the session. It's mostly, and it's almost like resistance. And I get this feeling that he's coming for this attachment. Like, he'll come in, and whenever I ask him a question, it's cute. Like, I'll ask him something, I'll say, oh, so why are you coming in? Like, it's interesting, you love coming for the sessions. And he'll say, oh, well, why not? Like, everything, even though he appreciates the sessions, in a way he is very resistant by avoiding questions and sort of playing these games. So I'm just like, I was debating, and sometimes it could be exhausting for me because he doesn't, like, I really have to keep the conversation going. So what would you suggest with him? Like, it seems like he is gaining. So would you think just keep on, allowing him to do this? Like, I mean, what is your take?
Well, I would be accepting his primary defense strategy here that he's doing. I would assume you're right that he's getting something out of his relationship with you. He's not close to his parents for different reasons, but you are accepting of him, you enjoy him, you're interested in him, you're not pushing him around, you're just a good human being who's showing an interest in him. So what do I want to do with that? I want him to reflect on that a little bit. So when the time is right, like you say, hey, you decide to come. He said, why not? And then I would
whenever I ask him a question, he'll play the negative, which honestly is starting to get a little bit annoying.
So you say, why are you coming? And he says, why not? And
right.
So then
right.
I would, well, you could do various things to that. You say, well, that's a good question. Let me see if I could figure out why not. Well, you could be playing a video game somewhere. You could be throwing a basketball around. You could be sleeping. So I could think of a lot of reasons why not. It would be better not to come here and see me, and yet you're coming. And so I wonder if instead you were thinking about saying something like, well, Rachel, I have a lot of reasons, but I don't want to tell you, because if I tell you, you'll just sit there and gloat you think you're so special, you're the best therapist in the whole city, and I'm so lucky to have you. Well, I'm not going to give you the satisfaction, Rachel, because I know that's probably what you do with it. Am I close, Johnny, in terms of why you're not going to tell me why you want to come here? Or am I wrong? Oh, I'm wrong. Okay, thanks for letting me know that. So it might be another reasons why you're coming here. Well, I'm coming here because I want to prove that you're not the best therapist in this city. I want to prove that you really don't have a clue how to relate to me. You don't know what to say to me. You don't know how to help me with anything, not alone this or that. Am I closer now, Johnny? No, I'm still not close. Okay, maybe you're looking. So I just start talking, just guessing what he might. And I talk for kids a lot. Sometimes I'm on target, sometimes I'm not, but I'm always accepting, a bit playful, obviously there. I'd be curious, and then I might throw in a bit of empathy to see what he does for that. You know, Johnny, I'm really glad you're coming here because my sense is, I could be wrong, but my sense is you don't have conversations like this with your parents. My sense is that just sitting and chatting about this and that is not something you and your parents do much. Am I right? Because my guess is you enjoy that. I do. Yeah, I enjoy having conversations with people I care about and I like, but my worry is that because I don't know, for all kinds of reasons, you and your parents don't have conversations like that. Is that right or is that wrong? If I'm right, I'm sad. I'm sad that I might know you better than your parents do. And that would make me sad because you need to have parents who know you more than a therapist who knows you. I might say that. When I give you a suggestion like that, your name is Rachel, right?
Yeah.
Yes. When I give you a suggestion like that, it's always, I give you the first sentence at most, and then I would not give you another suggestion until you, if I were supervising you, and how did the child respond to that? Because it's constant feedback loop, it's constant reciprocal. I can't have a whole long discussion without watching the child communicate. And the key communication of emotional realities is nonverbal. So I have to watch his face and his breathing and his posture and his gesture and his movement. And that'll give me many clues if I look for them as to how he's responding to what I'm saying. And if he's responding in a way that I don't think is helpful to him, then I'll just stop saying that. I'll just go somewhere else and talk about something else.
Okay, that's great. Another thing that I'm thinking of is my sense is, and he has even said this to his mother, that, oh, she doesn't respond to him the way that I respond to him. So my sense is that, due to the parents' mental health struggles and, the difficulties that are going on, that he doesn't have such a good attachment to the parents, which is why he's benefiting from coming in. Now, my question is, I feel that kids, in a way, like, I don't want to. On the one hand, I do want to address that with him if it needs to be processed. But on the other hand, I don't want to diminish his parents in his eyes. Like, I feel that kids need to have that secure parents, or however secure they feel the parents are. So what is your feeling in terms of the attachment with the parents? Do I address it with him, or do I can try to meet with the parents?
Well, my whole motto is family work. Is my default position is family. So speaking for myself, I would try to meet with the parents, and if they were really struggling, but they wanted to sort of be more available and more responsive to their son, I might get a friend of mine, another therapist, to work with them for a while. And then when they were ready, bring them in to have a joint session with their child. If that wasn't realistic, I might, if the kid gave me permission, I might ask the mother or the father to come in, and the mother can say to the kid, son, sometimes I don't quite know what to say because I was never close to my parents, if this is true. And so I want to be closer to you, but I don't quite know how to reach you. And I'm really glad you have Rachel because I want you to have somebody you could share your thoughts and feelings and ideas and worries with. And because right now we're not doing it that well. I like to learn, and maybe Rachel will teach us sometime to do that. Now, if the mother could say that, that'd be wonderful. I'd have to convince the kid of the value of having a joint session with mother. I'd see mother alone. And then if I had confidence she could say that, then I would try to convince the kid to let me bring her in. And he wouldn't have to say anything. If he refuses, I'll videotape it and watch, talk with his mother, and he won't be there. And next session, I'll show me and his mother talking to him. So it's a little safer for him.
Great idea, actually.
So anyway, but I won't say what pathetic parents. I won't describe the parents' persons. I will describe their behavior, though. I want that to be validated. He thinks his parents don't talk with him. Well, if they don't, I'll say, so your parents don't talk with you. I'm not diminishing them. I'm just describing the reality. They don't talk with them. I'm not calling them names about that or saying that they're selfish, mean people who don't love them. I'm just saying, so your parents don't talk with you about this stuff and you don't talk with them. And so you sort of keep this inside a lot. And do you feel they know you? What do they know about you? If they were to tell somebody, if they were to describe you to another person, what would they say about you? And then it'd probably be pretty meager and negative and have a lot of gaps in it, which would be very sad. And then I would say, I'm really sorry your parents, for whatever reasons, I don't know why, I haven't gotten to know you the way I think a child needs to be known. I'm glad you're letting me get to know you slowly, at your pace, a little at a time, the bits of you that you want me to know. I'm honored that you consider me a person that you want to share certain realities in your life with. So it might be
Okay,
that.
let's take another question from another Rachel. Racheli Sternheim, go ahead.
Hi. Thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it. I'm enjoying every minute.
Thank
I had also a question about a case that just came up that I wanted to ask you, and I was actually anticipating you coming tonight so I could ask you this question. A child shared something with me that made me so incredibly sad that I can't stop thinking about it the whole week. She shared with me that we were doing like a feelings journal together, and where the child can choose any feeling they want to journal about. So they're really in control, like there's no suggestion. She decided to journal about loved, and then shared that she cannot think of anything to put there because she never felt loved. This is an 11-year-old child. She never felt loved in her whole life. Now this is a kid that has loving parents. They're obviously not perfect parents, and she has nice teachers. She talks about relatives who she spends time with, who she likes, I guess not loves. But for some reason, her system, I guess, was never able to accept and feel that. My question is really, how do I bring this up with the parents in a way that's not accusatory, or I guess like how to soften it a little bit? Because I think that's something that needs to be addressed with the parents, but in a way that's not so rejecting and hurtful because I, as a parent, I think that would be like one of the most devastating things I can hear.
Correct. So first I would want to know more about if she were to experience love, what does she think the experience would be like? What does it mean? How does she differentiate love from liked? Does she see people that love each other? What do they have that she doesn't have? I want to know what she means by that word and what is lacking there from her point of view. It could well
It's interesting. So I did ask, like I said, I'm gonna write. I made some pictures and examples of things that maybe some kids would experience as loved. I asked her, I wonder what could happen that would make you have that feeling. And then she actually shared, like, if my parents would give me $1 million. So I made a picture of a treasure chest full of $1 million. And then she got very agitated. She said, no, not even that. And that was it. And then she started like acting very agitated. And
Okay, I would be wondering, did she ever, what she considers love, did she ever feel that? Did she have memories of feeling that when she was a baby, being held, or nursery rhymes, or played with, or any activities with her parents that she actually felt love back then? And let's say she doesn't remember any of those. And I think I would wonder if your parents really showed, they took delight in something that you did, and they really cherished moments with you, and they felt deep joy when you were talking to them about something in your life. If she experienced their joy, would she feel that's a sign that they may love her? That's close to love? Is it a physical family? Is there any cuddling at all going on there? Any
It seems
sort of
like,
cuddling?
yes, her parents do participate in session, and there is. They are sweet, they're affectionate.
Then
parent.
I would ask her, to ask the parents, tell us about her early years. Did she seem sort of standoffish? It was hard for her to sort of reciprocate, hard for her to sort of get in sync with you guys in terms of showing affection, having fun together. Did she just sort of pause or whatever? Anyway, so let's assume there was nothing dramatic there, no traumas of any sort, or she wasn't born with this really intense reservation for affective sharing and communicating. Then I would probably be wondering, because your response to, how do I tell the parents she says she doesn't feel, she never felt loved? Well, that's a key thing in her treatment. I would think if the parents, so I would work with the parents alone, and I would say, we're talking experience, we're not talking objective reality. Now, the only person, what do you mean by love, Mom? If you love your daughter, what does that mean? Now, I'm not saying you're lying to me. I'm saying if you say you love your daughter, then you love your daughter from your experience. If your daughter says she doesn't experience it, then that means that she doesn't experience it. Doesn't mean you don't love her. It just means she doesn't experience it, which is sad. But it's so wonderful that she's telling us now, because we have so many years to be able to help her to experience your love. So we have to sort of fine tune how you communicate love, I guess. And so one of the best ways to communicate love is if she's willing to share with you that she doesn't feel your love, you sit there and you listen, and you may allow a few tears, and you say to her, "Sweetie, I'm so sorry that I haven't been able to communicate my love in a way that you could feel it. I want to find out how to do that, because I have so much love inside, and I feel badly that you can't experience it. I have to find a way to help you to experience it." Now, if she said that, I'm watching this kid closely. Does she feel any love then? If the mom could say something like that? Total acceptance. What?
I don't know.
Yeah, right. So if mom was totally accepting, then I would ask the kid, what's that like when what your mom just said? Do you believe her? She said it's there and she doesn't know how to show it very well. She would love to learn how to show it in a way that you could experience it, because you don't experience it. And so what could it be? Maybe we could start to wonder about that. How your mom could be with you in a way that you could experience it. Now, I'm also have, when I talk to the parent alone, I'm running by the parent in my brain and in my conversation with them. If the child has been negative toward mom or dad over the years, not liking something that they did, angry at their discipline, angry at whatever, their values or whatever, how did they handle that? Did they reject that? You know, some parents have a very hard time when the kid is oppositional toward them and is, quote, disrespectful, or is not showing that they really like them. And then some kids are not allowed to have a feeling like that of I don't think you love me. Well, even if the mother never said that, that if that's in her brain, the kid knows it. So then the kid, it's sort of off limits to have a feeling like that. The kid's going to have it then. So that, if I'm right on that, if that's an accurate, check it out with the parents and explore with them. What's it like when your daughter in any way has criticized you, has disagreed with you, has not shown that they're proud that you're her parents. What has that been like for you? Now, if it made them furious or fall apart, dysregulated, that means they have to get stronger, emotionally stronger. They have to give her the ability to think less of them, to be embarrassed by them, to wish she had different parents. Because if they can give her that ability, then she'll be happy they're her parents. It's confusing. I mean, but that's how it works. If they can accept that she's embarrassed by them, she'll be less embarrassed by them. If they can accept that she doesn't feel their love, she will start feeling their love. So the key would be the parents being able to accept her emotional experience of her parents.
And what about exploring whether the parents were preoccupied and unavailable to give love when she was born?
That certainly would be part of my exploration. Yeah, in terms of back then when it started, when their relationship began, were they challenged in any way? Did they have relationship problems? Were they depressed? Were they preoccupied with financial worries? Did they have death in the family? It's interesting that one predictor of a kid not being securely attached is if the mother's parents died within a year or so of the birth.
Yeah. I once worked with a child who had a sibling who died just days before he was born.
Oh yeah, that would do it too. So then the parent just can't, they're grieving, and then they're just not able to communicate the love that they may feel. Or if they're severely depressed, they may not be able to communicate it
Right.
either. It's
Or certain personality disorders, which
not
was
alive. Yeah, it could be that. So I would be exploring that, because before I would introduce a conversation like this to the child, I have to trust the parents can do it. And if I don't trust the parents, I won't do it. I won't have them, in front of the child, get angry with the child. You ungrateful little da da da. How could you say I don't love you?
And then it makes things worse. Yeah, it make things worse.
Yeah, it would just make it worse. So I have to really have confidence in the parents. And if I don't have confidence in the parents, then I'm moving back to individual therapy is the way to go. And she needs the experience of one adult who can totally accept her, all aspects of her, including the fact that sometimes she might not like her therapist.
Right.
I think
Okay, Shoshana, let's take a question from
Thank
Shoshana.
you so much. It's really, really fascinating. Thank you so much, Dr. Den. Actually, what you were just saying relates to my question. I was just wondering what your thoughts are in terms of personality disorders. I mostly work with adults on the inpatient setting, and we definitely encounter, the access to the borderline personalities and, how you treat that in the, in the outpatient side or, in long-term therapy. It sounds like you're mostly seeing children and maybe their parents are presenting, but earlier you mentioned something about, attachment and emotional dysregulation. So that really brought up for me, I was wondering what your thoughts are in terms of personality disorders and what that looks like, in terms of your treatment. If anything changes or.
Well, then we certainly have to be a lot slower. If I'm taking a family approach and I met the kid, then we're probably going to split. Someone else will see the parents for a while, maybe for a year, I don't know, and I'll see the kid for individual work. Alan Shore, whose theoretical work I really love at UCLA, he's written some articles on. He feels attachment disorders are the birthplace of personality disorders.
Absolutely.
And so then the unresolved attachments, unresolved relational trauma in childhood are really where personality disorders sort of emerge. And if that's the case, then the parents need what the child needs, maybe more so.
Mhm.
And so they would need their own therapy. And a therapist who is comfortable working with personality disorders. It's not I haven't spent my lifetime doing that. So I probably would make a referral to somebody who has more experience than I do working with adults with personality disorder.
But the likelihood of a parent with personality disorder being successful and engaging in such a conversation in the room with you with the
That's what I'm
child.
curious
is-
about.
is-
Exactly.
right.
Like, are they even bringing their child into the room, right? Are they, do they have that, sense of awareness that their child has attachment difficulties?
Well, they may want to frame it somewhere else, that it's a constitutional thing or is due to bullies at school or something.
Mhm.
But a couple of things there. If the parents are not willing to address that at all, then it will be individual work. If the parents are willing to address that, I might have one session with the parents and the child where they say to the child, hey kiddo, I want to be clear, I have a personality disorder. I've had some success in getting parents who have a borderline personality disorder to tell their kid that. To make they need to make sense of it. Otherwise, what do they have left? They got shame. So if they say, no, it's my parents' issue, not mine, because they have a borderline personality disorder or they're bipolar disorder. Now, if the parent can say that, I give them a lot of credit because they may not be able to say that, but if they can, and the parent says, I'm doing my best, but my life was horrible. No excuses. I'm just saying I'm not there for you that often, and when I am, it's probably not that consistent, or may not be what you need. And I'm really glad that you're seeing a therapist who can be there, because you need somebody who's there for you consistently. And whatever you experience, tell them, no need to protect me. If you experience certain things, just tell them about it.
I think that's so amazing, because if you could have a parent who can acknowledge that the meaning behind the neglect in the relationship is not about you being bad or you not being worthy of love, but it's about my own challenge in being able to be present enough for you. I think that could be tremendously
Correct.
relieving for the child, and frankly for all relationships,
Right.
but especially
most
for
parents, in my experience over the years, maybe 20 times parents have done that for me. And they meant it and they said it. And I was so happy. And it really helped the child.
That's
Yeah.
healing in itself,
Sure.
It
I mean,
is.
I
Right.
recently had a child in the office who said to the parent, when we were really struggling with you when you were in third grade and refusing to go to school or whatever it is, and we went to get some advice from people, and this is how they told us to do it, and we feel really badly that this was the advice we were given because we were trying to help you and we really messed up.
Right.
And there were a
Right.
lot of tears, and it was really healing.
Right. That can really be helpful. Or a parent has substance abuse issues, and if they could acknowledge it to the child, and
Yeah.
you didn't cause it, it's my responsibility. I'm working on it. And
I mean, it could be a game changer, a life changer.
right. But it's hard for parents to do that, and many parents won't.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It'll be
That's
filled with
unfortunate.
but.
it's very
But that's
unfortunate.
no excuse.
Yeah.
You
We
know,
see
It's
a
very
very strong
unfortunate.
genetic loading, unfortunately, right? Like it's 50, at least we see here, and like 50%, with borderline, let's say, like that attachment, it just perpetuates itself. So
It
that
may.
we spoke for it. Yeah.
Yeah, especially, but the earlier you get, the less of the genetic component
Mhm.
may be less powerful to influence, because the environment can step forward if we get there early enough.
Right. Thank you so much
Let's
again.
take one more question. Chaim, go ahead. Chaim Judowitz.
Yeah, hi, Dan. Thanks. I appreciate your work. It's been impactful on my parenting as well as, I guess, my
Oh, thank you.
therapy. A question that I guess relates to the client that I'm dealing with currently is, how do you thread the needle in terms of acceptance with a client who's engaging in self-harm or a strong suicidal ideation?
Well, the needle is the behavior versus the inner life, the wish, the feelings, the thoughts, the ideas. I accept those. A clear plan to kill themselves, I don't accept that. I treat that as a behavior, and I try to limit it. I try to stop it. I evaluate behavior. I only evaluate behavior, but I will evaluate behavior that is placing the child at risk. And then after evaluating it, and then I will The second I go into the motives, this leading him to suicidal intent, I am totally accepting again. So can you help me understand? I'm not in any way trying to talk him out of it. Can you help me understand, my sense is that life for you so often, it's just not worth living. And that killing yourself is just is such a release. Could you help me understand the depth of your, I think, despair over living? Because my guess is it's very, very painful, which would explain why you want to end it. But can you tell me more about it, please? And where did it come from? And is it always that way? Or are there ever moments when it lifts, when you think there might be a reason? All of that is totally accepting, totally curious, without judgment, and having empathy over a life that they're now living. Now, self-harm is a little different, I think. If I'm considering this is self-harm, this is an expression of their shame, an expression of habit that developed, and now it may be, self-rewarding in itself. They may get some pleasure from self-harming. Now it's easier for me to focus on acceptance if I don't see it as a sign of suicidal intent, and easier to have empathy about it and just to stay with the inner life about it and see if I could hook the kid into wondering with me. And if hook the kid into part of himself, I'd probably start talking about parts that wants to do it and to wake up the part that might not want to do it.
Mhm.
I wonder if part of you, when you have that really strong impulse to cut yourself, I wonder if part of you sort of says, I don't want to do it. I want to stop doing this. And if so, why? Why do you think the one part of you might not want to do that? And do you ever want to help that part get stronger? Do you want me to help that part get stronger? Or do you want us to keep it weak and small? That's something to think about. My view is I have to really focus on acceptance and just stay with that while limiting behavior as much as I can and evaluating behavior.
How do you limit behavior specifically while
Well, I guess
maintaining the acceptance without those two things clashing?
Well, I could say, you're planning to kill yourself. Well, legally, I have to do something about it. But you know what? I like the law. Because I'll be really angry if you kill yourself and really sad if you kill yourself. And it'll be hard on my heart. It'll be hard on me because I've gotten to know you. And I would feel really sad. It's a tragedy that you're saying what I see you as having, you're saying it's not there or it's not worth it or it's never going to grow sufficiently to make it worth living. So yeah, I won't like that. So I'm going to try to stop you.
Mm-hmm.
Now, how do you feel about I'm trying to stop you? Is that disrespectful to you? I don't think it's disrespectful to your thoughts and feelings. I'm just disagreeing with the behavior that they're leading you to. But if you want to think and feel those types of things, we could talk about those, about your wish to kill yourself and the depth of the feelings that are leading you to have that wish. I think how do I say it? Maybe I'm a bit naive, but I'm really confident I could separate the two.
Mm-hmm.
And, I take a deep breath sometimes, and I make sure I'm regulated, make sure I don't have an agenda here to talk the kid out of the wish to kill himself. Totally accept his anger at me for making efforts to stop him. And then, okay, now I'm ready to be a therapist about the meaning of that behavior. And the meaning, it's easy for me to accept the responsibility to explore and discover meanings, which is sort of what I'm up to. What's
Do you
that
find
about?
that, do you find that trying to stop the child to do the behavior will actually make him feel more abandoned and more alone?
If I try to stop the behavior?
Yes.
No. Because I think I'm differentiating the behavior from the self.
Mhm.
And it's my commitment to you, the person that I know. I don't want that person to be dead, and I don't want you to be the source of your death. And I'm going to work to stop it. Now, if you say I have no right, if you say you're going to do it anyway, well, that's okay. I will accept that, but I'm going to try to foil you to prevent that from happening. Now, how do you feel about that? Are you angry with me about that? Do you think I don't understand the depth of your despair? You're right, I probably don't. Could you help me to understand it then? I want to join them in that experience as leading them to the wish to kill themselves. If I'm with them in that experience, they're less likely to want to kill themselves. They'll be less isolated. And I won't be with them in the experience if I'm evaluating it.
Can I jump in here and ask a quick question?
Sure.
Yeah, thanks so much. I'm really enjoying this. I have a question just listening to all this, and I'm learning so much as we're going along. I'm listening to your style of like all these sample dialogues of how you might engage in sessions. And I'm wondering if this is coming across this way because we're in a training, so to speak, presentation, or this is the flow of in an actual session. Do you engage with children in the style of like sometimes having this kind of like almost like this long dialogue where you're like there's like might be some stacked questions in what you're saying to the child?
Stacked questions, you mean key things, the points I'm trying to make or something?
Yeah, like as you're speaking, it's like, let's say it could be a series of, this is what I'm hearing in right now when we're talking, when you're giving us some of these sample dialogues, like 5 or 6 sentences stacked together in what you're trying to convey to the child. And in those, let's say 6 or 7 sentences, there's like more than one question. Now, right, you're building a theme and a concept that you're trying to convey to the child.
Yes.
I'm wondering if you've ever find that if you do that, that the child is getting lost.
Well, when I'm giving you these examples, there's no child here. So the stack of questions or comments that you're referring to would not exist because I'd say one, and then I'm waiting for the child to respond to that.
Okay, that's what I'm asking. If it's coming across.
But my voice isn't any different.
No. I don't mean your voice.
I think Leah wants to know how long you can actually talk to yourself without getting bored. Can you go on for 15 minutes with just talking to yourself without getting bored? Stacking questions.
No. I wanted to know.
Not just questions, comments, observations, ideas. And you know, if I'm interested in this child as a person, not as a problem, not as a symptom, but a person, we have to, the narrative therapist say, privilege the person. Then why won't I be interested in them? Why won't there be, you know, the issue isn't what to talk about. The issue is what to select from the thousands of things to talk about. You know, so approaching the child and they would tell me we're co-creating a story here. I'm not doing it. I'm not pushing it at them. I'm raising a possibility and they may change it. They may say no. Oh, okay, great. What then? Totally accept their no. I love when I get a no. That helps me it fine tunes my guesses.
Right.
Yeah.
I call it guessing wrong. When you can't get enough information out of children, you start to guess wrong.
Yes.
And then they'll start to
Right.
correct you.
Right. But
Yeah.
don't get distracted, Leah, by the content. It's the process of using your voice.
Yeah.
And when the child is in it, it comes across different than if I'm just giving you examples because there's no child here. And with some therapists, and they're struggling, and I think they're bright, they're brilliant, they good assessment, good dynamics, they're aware of what's going on, but they can't present it to the child. It comes across too formal, too rational, too lectury.
Dan, are you musical by any chance? See, I don't think that any therapist could do this. Not any therapist can modify the sing song.
Do you do it with your baby, Moshe? I mean, you have kids.
I'm musical. I don't have that problem.
Your voice, your babies don't know that. My bet is with your babies, there's a lot of rhythm in your voice, a lot of pauses, a lot of variations in intensity, and the beat changes. And my guess is there's a lot. But it is interesting when I start, this is a little weird. Well, it's not weird. It's just sort of how human beings are designed, I think. When I was developing this model and I really knew I had to use my voice in a much more rhythmic way, I had a strong need to take voice lessons.
Your voice is
So-
trained, right? It's
What?
trained. Your voice must be trained.
So then I started taking voice lessons, and then I was, it was a little embarrassing. At the end of the season, you have a concert. So there's these 10-year-olds and 12-year-olds and me.
Right where you belong with the kids. See that? See that? Self-fulfilling
Anyway,
prophecy.
but beyond that, and when therapists are struggling, I say, go, most schools have this. You go into a school, there's the professionals who wander around. I guess schools hire them for an afternoon to tell stories, right? Storytellers, professional storytellers, they go into school and talk to kids for a couple hours. They tell stories. At least a lot of schools do that. And I say, go to one of those schools, sit there and listen to how the storyteller tells his stories. The content is important, but listen to his voice, how he pauses and builds suspense and surprises. And the kids are on the edge of their seat. No kid in the whole room has ADHD while the storyteller is there. They're fully engaged in that. It's using your voice in a way that pulls the engagement and pulls the person into a story. Why wouldn't they be interested? It's their story. I'm not talking about animals. I'm not talking about somebody in California. I'm talking about, now I might change it a bit, but it's still their story. And if they can safely go there and there's less shame associated with it and less fear associated with it, and it's integrated, it's comprehensive, it's coherent, man, these kids, it's a gift that they now have. They have a story that they're not ashamed of or afraid of, that isn't fragmented, isn't filled with all sorts of gaps and inconsistencies. It's a coherent story. Now, as you know, Moshe, they are, if they took the adult attachment interview, they would pass as being autonomously.
Voice and tone. This is what I learned from you in that training years ago. That voice, tonality, timing is also vital in the message.
Oh, it really is.
Yeah.
It's the process. It's how you do it, how you tell it rather than just.
I think you should do a workshop just on demonstrating that information. Dan, do we have time for one more question? We're well
Well, I
over
do
our time.
trainings all the time about that, Moshe.
Oh, you do? Just on
Yeah, I do.
tone.
I
Do we
do
have time
training.
for one more question?
I've done 2 of them in Lakewood. I don't know
Do we
why
have
you weren't there.
time for one more question from Joseph?
Yes, sure.
Go ahead.
Hi, I came late, so I don't know if I missed something or not. But I was listening to you, and it happens to be that I've been practicing myself. I work mostly with adults and maybe older adolescents from an attachment framework using a modality called AEDP, Accelerated Experiential Dynamic Psychotherapy. And it's very much about making the attachment explicit in the room. Stating your like or your positive feelings towards the patient, doing a lot of things that would make, I was psychodynamically trained, and I think a lot of my supervisors cringe. But essentially being your most positive self to them, making that explicit, and then exploring with them if they're able to take it in, how they're able to take it in, at least as part of it. I was wondering what your thoughts were about using that kind of language with children, the explicitness of, rather than passively accepting, actively, delighting in them in a way.
Well, I don't know what you mean by passively or delighting. Delighting
rather than just
is
sitting and accepting, but like for example, saying something, I really like spending I really enjoy the sessions we have together. I like you.
Yeah, I could easily imagine saying that. I have said many times I enjoy the sessions together. If the kid says, well, do you like me? I said, well, it seems important that I say that to you. Can you help me understand? What's your guess? What's that like? And then I would say, yes, I like you, silly goose. What do you
Okay.
think I'm sitting here for? You
There's
think
the
I'm faking
dynamic.
it?
There's the dynamic.
Of course
right?
I like you.
Okay.
Yeah, I might cheat. I'm teasing here now a bit that, but to go back, Joseph, to your original point, you're talking about one of my most favorite adult psychology therapists in the history of the world, Diana Fosha,
hmm
the founder of AEDP in New York City. I
Mhm.
love AEDP. It really meshes well with my model of DDP. It meshes reasonably well with Sue Johnson's couples therapy, EFT for couples. In fact, the three of us have spoken at conferences together and given workshops.
Oh, okay.
And we just had Sue on the show a couple of weeks ago. Maybe
Oh,
it's
great.
maybe
Yeah,
it's Diana's turn.
Sue, Diana, and I often like each other's work and give each other a hard time and still like each other's work. And Jude Cassidy was there once as a moderator. You know, it was cute at the end of one thing we did. She says, maybe I'm not allowed to ask this, but do you love your clients? And the three of us all jumped in. Of course we do. Can't be a therapist if you don't love your client. And Jude was impressed with that, this researcher from Maryland.
hmm
But anyway, getting back to your original point there, Joseph. Yeah, I give feedback to my clients all the time about my experience of them, but the words aren't nearly as important as the nonverbal expression.
hmm
That they know it. That I won't say that I do anything that's passive. It's receptive, but not passive. And
I guess I meant explicit versus implicit. Maybe that's a better way to say it.
Okay, well, it may
Verbally.
be, but
Yeah.
but I'm very clear about their experience, and that's sort of a stretch. A lot of people are very sort of tentative with kids. Oh, I don't want to re-traumatize them. But if we got a nice relationship, we got a nice rhythm going, and I say, you know, we haven't talked yet about that you were sexually abused by your father. Could you help me to understand that experience of being sexually? My guess is it was horrific, but I don't know. And it might be very complex and very complicated. And you might say, I need some time to do that. In which case, take your time. But my guess is it would be good for me to understand that experience. I'm very clear with kids on the need, the value of their being able to get into a conversation about sexual abuse or about physical abuse or about whatever the horrific experience is. Once I know they're safe with me and they could say, no, I don't want to, no, I'm not going to talk to you about that, or then that's great. Don't talk to me about it.
Well, I think that combination of respecting their space, where you very explicitly express your respect for their space, while at the same time acknowledging the value of having them share, is really what creates that safety. So
Everything, yeah. I want them to share everything, including their favorite music and including what they dream about, including what they worry about before they fall asleep at night, including everything.
And you enable it
one
by
girl when she thought I was too much of a psychologist, and we were sort of struggling. It was a half a dozen meetings. We weren't getting anywhere, and I didn't quite know how to approach her, a teenage girl. And I said to her, why do you have a green handbag? And she says, what? I'm curious why you got a green handbag. Because if I recall, last week you had a brown one. She says, yeah. And I said, well, why do you have a green one today? And she says, what do you mean? I says, well, number one, you have more than one handbag. Why? Why do you need more than one handbag? And she was stunned that I asked such a stupid question that I didn't understand why. And then I was able to convince her I was serious about it. You can't fake it. If you ask a question, you have to be genuinely interested in the answer. So she proceeded over the next 2 sessions to tell me about the science and art of handbags and why she had her 8 handbags.
some
The
topic
various
I've always
factors
been
that went
interested in.
choosing which handbag to bring out with her. And then she would come to a session with a different handbag, and my job was to to guess what she was going to use, what she uses that handbag for. That was sort of a beginning of her allowing me to know her, because I wanted to know why she had these handbags.
Wow. Dan, this was so eye-opening and interesting. And again, I'm going to guess that the participants got so much out of the demonstration, you know, even more than anything else, because this is something that feels so real. It
Oh,
feels
good.
so, yeah, it feels so live. It feels so real. It feels so genuine. And it sort of gives us permission to act, you know, in the training I was with you, you spoke more about playfulness. It sort of gives us a permission to be a little silly, to be a little playful. And in this case, you know, to be just very genuine and open about what it is that we want from the clients and how much we care about them. And you know, I really appreciated that. And I'm really glad that you came on. We had 75 or 80 live participants, and I'm sure many other hundreds are going to watch it. And so,
Well,
a
thank
great-
you. And yeah, if I can give you, if you need my permission, you don't need it, but if you feel it would help you, to be yourself. The greatest gift we have as a therapist is ourself, I think. And so they know who you are and your experience of them, that much of that is conveyed non-verbally. And that's the gift that you're giving them. And yeah, I want you to have permission to do that.
I appreciate that. Okay, well, thanks again for coming on. We're going to call it a night.